All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron and I am here in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario at the Educators Conference at Mohawk Stony Creek campus. It has been a wonderful couple days of listening to speakers. I got one here fresh off the speaking train, just came out of the room from speaking. I have Kayla Vander Molen, who's a Pre-Apprenticeship Instructor at the Boilermakers. Kayla, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's been a really fun couple days. Seen lots of my old friends that are out here, the old educators that have been around the block a few times. How's it been for you?
It's been very enlightening. It is very fun to see everyone working together. We have a common goal that we're working towards, and it's just nice to see this path and this foundation that we're laying.
Mm-hmm. And is this your first educators conference?
This is my first CWB education conference.
Oh, so what has been the highlight so far for you over the last couple of days?
The highlight would be networking.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just to see the innovation with technology in the welding industry and how that's progressed so quickly in just the last couple of years.
Yeah, and this isn't really the venue where we show off that much tech. This is kind of like a little bit of industry here, but it's really about the teachers. It's really about the education. And have you made some cool connections here from across Canada?
Absolutely. Even there's a couple participants from Texas, so that was really great to see them. And in the welding industry, it is a relatively small world, so you do see a lot of familiar faces too.
So you are a Boilermaker?
Correct.
Red Seal?
Red Seal pressure welder.
Okay, and what got you on track with that? Like if we go back to the beginning of your career, when did you get into this field and why?
I initially started my welding career in Ottawa, Ontario. But
Ottawa, okay. Is that where you're from?
It is where I'm from. But that's not where it initially started.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated high school and I went to school for fashion design because I knew nothing of the trades. I don't come from a blue collar family.
Fashion design is a trade.
In a different facet, absolutely. And honestly, the skill set is very transferable.
Blueprint reading, patterns.
Yeah, working with material, fusion
joining,
material.
Yeah.
But honestly, the environment just didn't feed my soul. It didn't fit my personality. So I was kind of on the lookout trying to find something else that did suit my personality. So I just went to a local open night house and at a local, my God, I'm losing my words today. I'm sorry.
You just came out of speaking. I know what it's like. It's like you prep for your talk for like a weeks and then it all like falls out of your head and then you're like burnt out.
So I went to a local college in Ottawa, Algonquin College, and they had a trade booth there, and it had the most beautiful, elaborate metal art, and it just drew me in that direction. So I signed up for a night class and struck my first arc, and I fell in love, and I was like, "This is for me," and I never looked back.
So with fashion being obviously important to you, because you don't just pick that. That's something that you probably were into most of your life.
Yep.
And I love fashion too. I grew up in a very fashion conscious home. That striking an arc, it must have kicked in that whole creative mode for you, right?
Mm-hmm. It really did. And it just showed me that you're able to work with your hands in many different areas throughout different occupations. And trades just worked for me. And
then from there, what did you do? You took the night class. Then that's just the beginning. That's just now. That's not enough to get a job with. So what did you do?
I ended up taking a 10-month course out of Algonquin College. I met some wonderful instructors, met a couple of mentors that helped me along the way. And I got my CWB qualifications and I was ready to hit the ground running.
Thank you for your money. No.
Yeah, you're welcome. Actually, during my first CWB test, that's where I met my husband.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Was he an inspector or something, or was he another welder?
Another welder. It was his first time testing too. And well, sparks flew.
Oh, my.
Yes. We love the cheesy puns. But from there, I just started looking for work actively in the locations, but Ottawa is more of a white collar town.
It is. We actually had that conversation this week already about how Ottawa is a very interesting place for the trades. There's not a lot of big business in the area, and most of the business is tied to construction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did work out in the construction field for a bit. I worked in a truck manufacturing shop. Had a lot of fun doing that, but just the money wasn't there. So I packed my bags and drove out to Alberta, and that's really where my journey began.
So where in Alberta did you go to?
To Calgary.
To Calgary. And did you go with your welder boyfriend already?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you guys were both like, we're going to Alberta. Why didn't you stop in Saskatchewan? What's wrong with Saskatchewan?
Doesn't have mountains.
Oh, come on. We got big hills.
Yeah.
Really pretty hills.
Well, we just wanted to try something very different. Sometimes it's a sink or swim environment, and we decided to just jump headfirst into it.
Well, and going to the prairies, honestly, is pretty safe bet. There's so much work out there, right? That's one of the things. I've never had a day of unemployment in my life. Like, it's not even been an option. Like, it's not even a threat. It's like, oh, I'm going to fire you. Like, okay.
I'll go across the road.
Yeah, exactly. I'll literally have a job in an hour, bro. Like,
yeah.
So how was it like for you going to Calgary, and did you look for shop work? What was it that you were hoping to find?
So when I got to Calgary, I was just seeing what opportunities there were. Unfortunately, at the time, I did not know about the Boilermakers, and I wasn't very well versed in what a union was either. So I found a local machine shop, and I got the job within 4 days of being in Calgary.
Yeah.
And I worked there for quite some time. They gave me a good foundation.
Machine shops are fun. You get to learn the machinery. A lot of it's just fixing things machinists screw up. Oops, took off a little bit too much here.
I'll just build that up for you. Put it back on the lathe. We're good. So I got to do that. I got to weld stainless steel casings around industrial magnets.
Nice.
So I had the experience of arc flare and how to kind of distract that magnetism. And then that just slowly progressed into wanting to grow more in my career. And when I discovered the Boilermakers, I knew that that's the future I wanted.
Did you scope out the other trade unions? Were you like, what's up with the iron workers? What's up with the pipe fitters, millwrights, Boilermakers, clack? Like, I mean, there's so many, especially Alberta, very union heavy.
Yes.
There's so many unions there that offer welding pathways. What made the Boilermakers stand out to you?
So during my job hunt, I was looking at many different locations. And sometimes when you go first into a building, you go to hand in your resume, the first person that you see and how they greet you, they can make or break it. And I just found that when I went to the Boilermakers, my first experience in that building was so pleasant and monumental. And I was like, this is what I want to be a part of. And I have to say that might have been my driving factor of why I didn't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, and I've kind of actually heard that some halls are not, I wouldn't say standoffish, but they're not as openly friendly. They some have a reputation for that, which I hope that, whoever's listening is conscious of that. Is like, we should be more open and welcoming at the front door, because that is a thing.
Absolutely.
It is a thing. And you go to the Boilermakers Hall, and did they have any postings up, or were you like, hey, how do I become a member? Because it's not just like show up and you get the job. There's a process.
There is definitely a process. And the Boilermakers typically is one of the harder unions to get into because they're wanting all-stars on their team.
Yeah.
Now, when I got there, I went to the front office and I was asking exactly what you just said. How do I get a job here? And while I was in that office, a couple of Boilermaker members were there. And they turned around, they started speaking with me. So I heard it right from the source. And honestly, having that kind of engagement was very helpful. And then I just started my path forward. I signed up for our first apprenticeship recruitment information seminar. I went through all the steps, took a 2-week pre-apprenticeship course. And that's even with my background in welding already.
Yeah.
Just because I worked in construction and I worked in shops, I was new to the industrial sector. And that's why I was like, you know what, I need to learn as much as I can so I am competent, capable, and safe.
Yeah.
And those were the steps I took.
And when you were looking at these first steps with the Boilermakers, like you're just starting to go through the orientations and kind of learning what the job is, what were your thoughts? You're like, oh man, I'm really gonna have to work on my skills. Like, I mean, you have to start getting pressure tickets. Did you have any pressure tickets at this point?
No, I didn't.
Like, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to start learning how to weld in circles in a hurry here. And like TIG experience. The Boilermakers are one of the only trade unions for welding that has extensive TIG. Some of the other ones will have some, but the Boilermakers have lots, right? So
Well, TIG welding is definitely the Boilermakers' bread and butter.
Mhm.
Now, thankfully, from my experience in the machine shop, I had a good amount of experience with TIG and many different alloys.
Mhm.
Honestly, I wasn't too intimidated by all the steps and what I was challenged with because, in fact, that excited me. I was like,
Mhm.
let's challenge myself. Let's see what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
What I was nervous with is, oh, I have to go out to the oil passer. I now have to drive to and from work. Now, there's so many steps from point A to point B. But then having that mentorship that was provided to me,
Mhm.
that really helped me with my trajectory forward and just really calmed things down.
And what about being a female? What about being a woman stepping into there? Was there any apprehension? Was there many other women within the hall? What's the number hall for the Boilermakers where you are?
I'm with Local Lodge 146 in Calgary.
146. Okay,
Yeah.
so was there other women within 146 that you could lean on for mentorship, or was it all good? Like no problems at all? Like
At the time, I did not know of any of the ladies that worked there.
Mhm.
I got to meet those amazing sisters throughout my time working with the Boilermakers. I wasn't overly intimidated about just working predominantly with men because I already had the experience over the last couple of years. But I just went out to the job site, realized I was the only female, and there's a group of 300 guys that were my brothers working out there. And honestly, 98% of them is going to take you under their wing and show you everything that they know, and they will support you. But in
Yeah.
every apple orchard, you always have a couple of rotten
Bad apples,
apples.
yeah.
Exactly.
And you just kick them to the curb. Nobody eats them anyways, right?
You know what? We're changing our workplace culture nowadays, and that's evident every time you go out to the job site.
So like the last two people we've had on the podcast today, if we've talked work culture,
Yeah.
And how that's shifting and how it's awesome. It's necessary. It
Mhm.
needs to happen. But it also, for some people, it's very difficult. Some organizations, it's very difficult. They've existed trade unions have been around over 100 years
Yes.
in Canada. And Alberta, Saskatchewan, like the prairies, we're like the stronghold of unions for a long, long, long time.
Mhm.
And I think the unions are actually doing a very good job of trying to correct culture. But we've seen a lot of places in the industry where it's kind of like a black hole. Like
Mhm.
it's not moving forward. They're kind of stuck. And it's like, it's not, they're crying for welders, but you kind of almost want to say, well, you're not going to get welders until you start kind of running your company a little bit better.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like people aren't just going to come and with all the work available, people got a choice now.
Mhm.
They got a choice to not work for you. They can go somewhere else, right?
Absolutely. Can't agree with that enough.
Yeah. So what is it within the Boilermakers that you feel would be like a strong positive culture?
Strong positive culture that we have is that we work as a community. Our fraternity is monumental within the Boilermakers. How we stick together for any time one of our members is injured, we'll come together and we'll put money into a hat, essentially, right? And give it to that member. We make sure that we mentor each other. Some of our journeymen will bring in their apprentices into the hall and work with them one-on-one, say,
Mhm.
hey, remember when we were working on this vessel? Let's apply that to the shop and let's troubleshoot it. Let's test the limits on why we do things in certain ways.
Mhm.
So I have to say that kind of camaraderie goes
The
a long way.
mentorship, I guess, right? The whole
Yes.
mentorship angle, which is so important, especially with the gaps in education we have, to expect young or new to the trades people to go for a year of school and go out there and get a job and just be good is unrealistic,
Mhm.
especially when we have kind of reduced the amount of contact they have with the trades in society. That without some mentorship, it's like you're just pushing boats out into the ocean without any sails, right?
Yes. Honestly, without mentorship, you kind of feel like you're just running in a circle without going down any particular
yeah,
path or
yeah.
road. It's hard to achieve goals if you don't have a mentor.
Mhm.
And that's something that Boilermakers we foster. And I see that time and time again.
What about work-wise? How are the Boilermakers doing work-wise? Like I know there's serious investment happening with the Boilermakers right now. There's big money coming in federally, provincially, big projects, training centers going up.
Hmm.
Is there enough work? Is there too much work? Where are you guys standing?
So because Boilermakers, we have a very different type of work scope. We're typically very cyclical, working during the spring and during the fall. I would have to say that COVID's really impacted the oil and gas industry. And you're going to see a lot of our members working from the spring right through to the fall. Like
Mhm.
to have that kind of job scope is very important and definitely benefits our members. You see more and more travel carding taking place nowadays, and it's important to foster that migrating workforce. Regarding training centers, I do work at the Calgary Boilermaker Hall in that training center, but we also have an amazing training center in the Edmonton location. And what we do there, we host many different courses. One of these newer courses that we've been hosting is called UTIP Filling the Gap course, where
we're working with you guys on that one.
Yeah. We've paired up with CWB, and with that federal grant, we've been able to push through a lot of individuals in order to get their pressure qualification. It's a fully funded course, and just to see the success rate of the students is absolutely amazing. And it's never been like that before, because receiving welding qualifications, as you know, that is very difficult. And there's a large majority that people, when people go in to do their tests, it's not always successful.
No.
You need to have that ARC time in order to build up that skill set to be successful.
And then in terms of the membership, you know, are you guys maxed out? Are the Boilermakers bringing in members actively everywhere?
Absolutely.
Because I know all the trade unions have to watch their numbers, right?
So Boilermakers across Canada, because we're in different jurisdictions, they all run slightly different. So I can only speak for Local Lodge 146 in Alberta, and we're constantly actively bringing in more members. This can either be a journey level welder with a pressure qualification, or individuals that are experienced in the middle trades, but they're wanting to get into more maybe the Boilermaker aspect. And we offer a pre-apprenticeship program at our hall where we teach the foundations of the trades, and it's kind of like a ground up approach. We grow our own.
Yeah. And then what about, like you said, pressure tickets? Do you have to have a pressure ticket to be a Boilermaker? Is it like part and parcel of the gig? Can you be a welder without a pressure ticket, or is that not a thing?
As a Boilermaker welder, it is strongly recommended that you are a pressure welder.
There's much less work you're going to be able to go to if you don't have it, right?
You'll be a lot more versatile on the job front. So it only makes sense. Why would you not increase your qualifications when all the resources are there?
Yeah. And where do the Boilermakers fit in the job scope of, say, you know, within the other steel trades? You know, so you got the iron workers, you got the pipe fitters, you got the structurals, you got the manufacturing. You know, what's their gig? What is it that they're usually getting called out to do?
We're there to do maintenance, to go into the confined spaces, work from the inside out of a lot of our equipment, and or to do large demolition projects at oil and gas facilities and or power plants. We've recently did a job where we ripped out the entire inside of a boiler and replaced all the water walls. We do the root filling cap, 100% X-ray of our welds. So pretty much the Boilermakers, when we go out on the job site, we're the surgeons on the job site because of the complexity of our welds.
And what about the relationship between the Boilermakers and the other unions? How does that go? Because I've worked for all three. I've worked for the iron workers, the pipe fitters, and the Boilermakers, and I'm asking you a loaded question here.
Yeah, you are. Hey, I'm jumping on a mine here. You know what? I have to say that changes from province to province and local to local. I know that sometimes the pipe fitters work with the Boilermakers work with the pipe fitters. So some unions are stronger, have stronger relationships, and some are working that out.
Very political. I find that there's a mutual respect, and I find that it's a mutual competitiveness.
Yes,
which is healthy. I think it's healthy as long as it's not negative. But it's like, because you know, I mean, pipe fitters can weld. They got all pressure tickets. They can do great stuff too. And it's like, well, you get to do that. Well, we can do this too, you know.
But jurisdiction is a very important aspect to our trades, right? We don't want to cut each other's grass. And at the end of the day, we are all union, and we do need to stick together in order to have a stronger front for whatever we're fighting for. We are the working class, and we just need to make sure that we constantly make sure that we have the necessary skill sets and we constantly upgrade.
Well, it's often a debate, the pro-union versus non-union, right? And a lot of, you know, I've worked both for most of my career, and I see both sides. I really do. But I feel like even if you are non-union or you are, say, not advocating for unions or don't care about unions, that there's still an understanding that needs to be had about how unions affect the pay scale,
Yes.
how they affect the benefits packages and pensions,
Mhm.
because that ground is 99% of the time broken
Mhm.
by unions. They're the ones that are pushing generally to get those levels higher than they are. And that affects the entire industry,
Mhm.
whether they're union or not union, and that's kind of an advocacy piece that unions take on that most companies don't.
Mhm.
Now, in your position, what you do, how you feel about the Boilermakers, are you on the advocacy front? Are you a believer in the fights? Because it's not part of the job. They don't say like you have to do these things, but there is the get-togethers, there's the strikes, there's the picketing,
Mhm.
and there hasn't been a strike for a while, but I mean, there's the actively supporting other unions as well, right?
Mhm.
What do you feel about that whole world?
I'm a huge advocate of,
Yeah.
of unions and the union way of life. During my pre-apprenticeship program that I teach at the Calgary Hall, I do teach the basics of union philosophy.
Mhm.
Why is it important to participate? Why is it important to voice your opinions? And at the end of the day, we just need to make sure that anybody coming into the union can know more about the importance of it and the value of it. For example, the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum had they came out with a survey a little while ago,
Yeah.
and they found out that women in the skilled trades that were non-union typically on average got paid 52% less than our male counterparts. And that is profound in our day and age to still see
Mhm.
that difference. So that right there is just one additional reason
Because that
why
doesn't exist at all in the unions.
no.
Your rate is your rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's equality across the board. And that's
Yeah.
another thing is the history of unions and their equality. Unions are the ones that assisted with the racial and gender integration into the workforce.
Mhm.
So,
And what you do now teaching, what is it that you teach? What do you take care of? What's in your portfolio at your job?
mhm. So I focus on recruitment. So I go to a lot of different high schools in and around the Calgary area and in the outskirts. I inform people about the skilled trades, about the opportunities. And then I also host the Apprenticeship Recruitment Information Seminar. So I get to give more information about what an apprenticeship is, what are the steps, and what may best suit you, depending on what your goals and dreams are. And then I host the 2-week pre-apprenticeship course at the Calgary Hall. I have a wonderful coworker who does the same job, but in Edmonton. And during this 2-week course, it's a foundational course where we teach you the basics of welding, rigging, fitting, using of tools to simulate the work environment, working at
Mhm.
heights from a 20-foot scaffold, just knowing the basics. So at that point, the students can say, you know what, this really fits my personality, or thanks for the opportunity, but I'm
Not
afraid
for
of
me.
heights, but
Yeah,
I want to be
yeah.
a welder.
Mhm.
So it's very important that we have that. And then once the students graduate from that 2-week program, which is completely free of charge, then we are able to dispatch them. They go out to work and they're competent and capable. They're able to contribute to their crew. And at the end of the day, they're also working safe. And that is the number one most important thing.
What are some of the supplementary things that a Boilermaker must learn
Mhm.
in terms of being on a job site? Like, what are some of the courses or certs that they got to have?
So if I understand correctly, are you referring to safety tickets?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
do you need a H2S? You need fall arrest?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Boilermakers, we must have Energy Safety Canada, Fall Protection, Energy Safety Canada, Confined Space Entry Monitor, definitely H2S,
Mhm.
Common Safety Orientation. What other courses? Oh yeah, we have to do a respiratory fit test as well for 3M equipment.
Can you have a beard?
No, sir, you got to
No.
shave that off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of guys that may come through our apprenticeship recruitment information seminar with a beard, but by the time they come through the
Hey,
class, they've shaved.
it's not necessarily guys. Women can have beards too. Hey, like
To each their own. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Confined spaces, is that necessary or optional?
It's a requirement because
requirement.
Boilermakers, we typically work in confined spaces.
Mhm.
That's our bread and butter. That's our cubicle, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But honestly, working in a confined space is a lot of fun. And a confined space isn't simply just going in and out of a small location. Sometimes
It's crawling underneath or being
Yes.
wedged in between tubes or
going through a 15-inch inside diameter manway.
Yeah.
So I was working on the shipyard several years ago, and my confined space, I had to go down to the very basement of the ship. I lifted up the floor and I went another 20 feet down, 20 feet over, and that was my confined space.
Yeah.
And It's fun. It's exciting. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Now, let's actually, you know what? This is a perfect time to take a break. We're at the halfway mark. We're going to take a commercial break right now. But when we get back, I want to hear about the programs that are running out of the Boilermakers now going forward. Like what exciting new stuff is coming up and maybe some of the cool projects that is happening in your local. All right. So that sound good?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to be right back here on the CWB Association podcast with Kayla. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron. I'm here with Kayla Vander Molen. I don't want to get your name wrong because I had to practice it. So, and it's not even complex. I just was like stumbling on it because I'm sometimes not
Lots
that
of
smart.
syllables.
Yeah. You know, you're a pre-apprenticeship instructor at the Boilermakers. And before the break, we were kind of talking about, you know, what would be on the list of cards that you got to carry as a Boilermaker in the training. And like any job, there's X amount of skills and X amount of things you need to do to be on site, to be a part of the teams. But in a Boilermaker life, in their training programs, like I believe it's 4 years. Is it 4 years?
It's 3 in Alberta.
3. Okay. So
Correct.
3 years at your local to become a Red Seal Boilermaker. What is that? What does that entail? Walk me through the whole process front to back of what the courses look like.
So if someone's wanting to start an apprenticeship from square one, they get the opportunity to either choose the Boilermaker trade or the welding trade. And now later on, if they want to be dual ticketed, they have that opportunity. So let's say you're doing the welding trade. All right, so we register you as a first-year apprentice. You have to work 1,560 hours within a year's time. And within that time period, you can go to school at whatever period that suits you best. School is only 2 months. Part of school, it is really geared towards kinesthetic learners, which is fantastic because at least 1/3 of tradespeople are hands-on learners.
Yeah.
As you progress first year to second year mirrors first year, but you're learning new content while you're in school. You have a little bit more responsibility on the job site. You get an increase in pay, which everyone's happy with.
Yeah.
And then third year is a lot more technical, a lot more arc time. Yeah, that's when we really start to weld pipe while in our apprenticeship. And when you are in your second and third year, there are more courses available at the Union Hall and for any apprentice to increase their skill set, which is
extra stuff.
Yeah, always extra stuff. And then they get their journeyman ticket. Now, after you receive your journeyman ticket, that's great, but sometimes being a journeyman handcuffs you. It keeps you only in that province where you don't have the ability to easily go into work at other locations throughout Canada.
Why not though? Why would that be? I mean, the apprenticeship program is across Canada. So why would a journey person out of your hall not be able to have the mobility?
So apprenticeships throughout Canada are very different. Unfortunately, it's not cohesive across Canada and across our provinces. It would be great if it was. But hopefully in time, CWB will help rectify that.
We have been working on harmonization.
Yes.
Yeah.
But by having your red seal, your interprovincial red seal, that is what allows for you to go from province to province and also just across North America fluidly.
The world, actually.
Yeah, there we are, the world fluidly, and having your skill set recognized. So that is what we're looking for any of our guys to get it, not our guys, but our members
yeah,
to go towards getting that red seal. And after you receive that red seal, that's not the end all. The analogy I love to use in regards to an apprenticeship is you're laying your foundation.
Yeah.
You want it on solid ground. Once your foundation has solidified, that's your red seal ticket. Where can you go from there?
Now, what are you going to build?
Yeah, exactly. And when you, let's say you erect your walls, you put on your roof, you put in your doors, that there's just extra qualifications that you can get through the Boilermakers Union Hall.
Okay. And, as you work through this, how is the success rate for the students? Like with all colleges, all training programs, there's always a certain attrition, a certain people that don't finish. There's also some people that just don't want to go to the end. They're happy being a level 1 or a level 2 forever, indefinitely. Do you see that within your hall much, or is there a pretty good stream of working your way up, getting your journey person, picking your path and writing it out?
There's a pretty good streamline for it, and there's pretty good streamline for it for individuals to complete their apprenticeship. Now, the reason for that is AIT, Alberta Industry and Training. If you do not complete your apprenticeship in a certain period, your apprenticeship is canceled. Okay. And in Alberta, you have to either be a journeyman welder and or an apprentice in order to legally work
because it's
in that
compulsory.
Province. Correct. So you typically see a lot of people progressing forward. Now, if someone doesn't want to do welding, they're always able to get into the Boilermaker trade instead, where you're not always going to be just burn and rod, but instead you're going to be focusing more on the fit up and the rigging and the safety aspects. That being said, you need to be very meticulous in nature and pay a lot of attention to all details as a Boilermaker, just because the kind of complexity of the work that we do and the tight tolerances that we work in. So that's something that's also very exciting, is because we work with a large variety of individuals.
So if someone said, I want to be a Boilermaker, but I don't want to be a welder, what's their daily work look like? What are they doing? Because I just assumed, I didn't know that. My dad was a Boilermaker for 40 years. Okay. And I didn't know you could not be, you didn't have to be a welder because he was a welder, so like, what do they do? So Boilermakers, let's start from the apprenticeship again. If you want to be a Boilermaker in Alberta, you would have to go to NAIT. So that's the only school in Alberta, which is located in Edmonton, that teaches the Boilermaker trade, because the Boilermaker trade is very niche. And as per the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum statistics, it shows that the Boilermaker is the #1 in most demand trade across Canada. Yeah. So once our Boilermaker apprentices go out to work, they shadow our journeyman. What our journeymen typically do on a daily basis, they're working from heights, they're lifting up equipment. Some of this equipment and or our vessels are 30,000 pounds or more. They lift them 200 feet up in the air, give or take, on large projects. Then slide it into a corner of a building somehow. Yeah. Either we remove the walls from a building to insert it in, or we lift it over top of a live building just to fit it in place with a tight tolerance of, let's say, 1/16 of an inch. And now, if you're working in a fab shop, 1/16 of an inch is the size of a barn door. Yeah, it's huge. When you're working with equipment that can be up to 100,000 pounds. Yeah, and it's moving around. Yeah, you got a little bit of leeway. We did a project. I mean, they give you a 30-second per bolt hole, so you got room. Yeah, we time ourselves too, just for competition purposes. But yeah, that's typically what the rigger side of Boilermakers do in a nutshell. I can definitely elaborate a lot more on that. But because in the Boilermaker trade, there is a 2-part to it, we also have the fitters. So fitting is anything from fitting pipes together for water walls in a boiler house, right? Or just fitting up any kind of construction if you are in a Boilermaker fabrication shop. Do they tack? Do the fitters tack, or does the welder tack? So that is a gray area. Typically, you are able to be qualified as a tack welder. Yeah, you don't see that's that a often. Weird one, but yeah. It is different. Welders typically do the tacking. That being said, if you choose the Boilermaker trade during your apprenticeship in technical training, there is a fabrication project where you get to fabricate a vessel, you fit it up, and you weld it yourself, even though you'll have enough knowledge. Oh, of course. Yeah. First year and second year of Boilermakers typically do overlap significantly in many different aspects. Okay. And then what kind of stuff do you guys have developing now in your hall? Is there special programs? You talked about, UTIP programs happening. Is there any coming out of your hall? Are you guys involved in that? What's cool? What's slamming right now? So in the Boilermaker Hall in Edmonton, you have all different kinds of courses taking place. Some courses are for members only, such as Master Rigger, Torque and Tensioning, and that's taught by one of our amazing instructors. Then you go over to the Welding Hall, and there is the UTIP program, Mhm.
Right now, we're only hosting 2 programs per year. But if you go down to Calgary, we're also hosting the 2 UTIP programs per year, November, December, January, February. So it's not intruding on our shutdown seasons.
Mhm.
In Calgary, we don't do any of the technical kind of Boilermaker upgrading work, but we do some of the foundations, which is very beneficial.
Yeah.
So that UTIP course is probably the number one course that our members are very interested in participating in currently.
Mhm.
But in Calgary, we're constantly involved in the community. So we always have different events going on. The presentation I did today was about one of our profound events that we have every single year that we host with the teachers in the community.
That's what I was going to ask you is, what are you doing here for the Boilermakers? CWB is involved with Boilermakers lots in the last couple of years.
Yes.
But even prior to that, we've always been around because most Boilermakers are welders in my mind, and many of them, if not the majority of them, are CWB Association members.
Mhm.
We've always had great representation from Boilermakers in the association. That's how I found out about the association when I was 17 from my dad, who was a Boilermaker and would take me to these meetings, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what are these crazy meetings? And there's free chicken, it's good. And but then you're out here at EdCon
Mhm.
as an educator that works for the Boilermakers. And what are you here to tell the other educators? What do you want to teach them?
So I'm here. I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Stefan Delouf, who is one of the executive directors of Franco Sud in Calgary. And our presentation today resulted around an event called the Welding Rodeo. So Boilermakers and teachers from multiple different districts in Calgary and surrounding areas have formed an organizing committee where we're able to host a bunch of wonderful off-campus learning experiences, where we're able to host camps and also assist with funding for different programs that take place. But the one event that we're very happy with is the Welding Rodeo, which has grown into Canada's second largest youth welding event.
So like probably behind skills.
Yes. Yeah. Second to skills. The neat thing about the Welding Rodeo is we're not looking for the high school students that will be going to skills. We're looking for the high school students that have a strong interest in getting into the welding industry, have great attendance, and just want to be challenged. So by attending this event is kind of like a reward for the students.
Mhm.
Every school, and so far we've only went up to, I think, max 10 schools, have 4 students from each location, and they come and have a weld off, and it's a very friendly, competitive
I
environment.
love weld offs.
Yes.
All true welders love weld offs.
Represent
I'm
your skill
down. I'm
set.
down. So actually, someone brought up to me the welding rodeo today because it's like, first of all, why does everything in Calgary have to be a rodeo? But I guess it's a Calgary thing.
Cowtown.
Yeah. Okay. We'll let you have that one. But then the other thing was like, can we enter this rodeo? Like, I mean, we're old and red sealed, so we're not young or apprentices. But can I get in a weld off?
It's funny that you say that because a lot of the teachers and a lot of the industry leaders that come and participate and or sponsor the event, they're just like, I wish there was something like this for me.
Yeah.
And just because you get to see what's taking place, how excited everyone is, and well, the prize table. Typically, on average, there's over $100,000 of prizes that are donated from so many wonderful sponsors. And some of these sponsors,
And it's probably not 100,000 boxes of macaroni and cheese. It's probably some nice stuff.
oh yeah, some of these sponsors are Miller, Lincoln, 3M.
No dissing to the mac and cheese cult. All right, so
Also, some of the local shops in town are
Yeah.
offering scholarships.
wow.
But without fail, every single year, you're always going to come across one welding student that picks a Boilermaker hoodie instead of a $400 welding lid.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, it's great to see. Like, I love it.
So is this all done through the Boilermakers, or do you partner with other people?
So we do partner with the National Training Trust Fund with the Boilermakers, but we can't say this is our event because it's actually the teachers that kind of started it, and then the Boilermakers were invited. And then over time, as the Welding Rodeo progressed back in 2010 to 2015, the numbers were growing. So in 2016, the Weld Rodeo was hosted at the Boilermaker Hall the first year, and it's just grown since. We now have 6 different school districts that have participated in this. And as mentioned briefly before, we're not looking just for inside of Calgary,
Mhm.
but we're trying to reach out to the rural communities to touch base with those students, as well as to get those teachers involved and get those teachers from the rural districts into the welding community so they have more resources.
Is the CWB Association Calgary chapter involved at all, or SAIT, or any of those groups?
Absolutely. Without fail, every single year of every single year when we've hosted the welding rodeo,
Mhm.
CWB's played a huge part in it. Without CWB, we would not be able to host this event.
Okay.
Just from that
Why am I just hearing
sponsorship.
about it now? Why am I just learning about it now? Like, and it's in when? July every year?
I
Or no?
know it's
No.
typically in February and March because we don't want to
Oh, it's gonna be
overlap skills.
cold.
But you're.
I'm from Regina.
Oh,
It won't. It'll be
okay.
warmer than where I am from. But
But if you come visit us, you'll go snowboarding on your time off.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a great time of
Can
year.
you guys see me snowboarding? It would look like an orange on a toothpick. Like I would. I would look like a donut on a popsicle stick. Like that's what I would look like. Snow. It's okay. Anyways.
All right then, snowboarding out of the question.
I mean, I'd love to try. I've skied before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
I can't get that imagery out of my head now. But typically, why we host it in February and March is that's the end of end of the high school semester,
Yep.
right before the next semester starts. So it works for the teachers and it works for our schedule because we're not overly busy at that time. It's just the very beginning of our shutdown season.
That's perfect timing. Actually, I'll definitely have to be there next year.
Yes,
Make sure I get invited. I'll
I
come
will.
out.
I'll send you
Yeah.
that invite when I get that definitive date. But the great thing about this Weld Rodeo is it's on a Saturday. Students are there at 7:00 in the morning,
Just raring to go.
smiling ear to ear. How many
Mhm.
times do you see teenagers that excited to be awake on Saturday and being at the location at 7:00?
Outside the dispensary sometimes, but
Oh, that's a rabbit hole, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm going to ask that question. How does the marijuana legislation affect Boilermakers? And because I know they're very tight on drug testing.
No changes from us.
No, everything stays the same.
Yeah, contractors still require for people to
Mhm.
go and do their drug and alcohol test prior to going out to work. That's standard across the board with the oil and gas industry. Safety first. And at the end of the day, we're playing in their sandbox. We abide by their rules.
Yeah, because I know like some of the other unions have pivoted. The
Yeah.
policing union had to pivot. There's a
Mhm.
few other unions that have had to pivot but it's also based on what they do, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
An analogy that I typically like to use for this, because that is a topic of discussion quite
Mhm.
often, is for individuals that sign up or are working with the NHL and they have a new agreement. Typically, they're not allowed to go on snowboard. Why?
Mhm.
Because they have to perform that kind of sport throughout the entire season. Well, snowboarding, as we know, it's not illegal.
No,
So
It's
same
really hard on the
idea.
ankles, though.
Yes, it is. So just the same idea.
Mhm.
If you want to continue smoking marijuana, then the oil and gas industry is just not
Yeah,
for you.
there's other industries that'll accommodate.
Exactly. So you do what works best for you,
Yeah.
right?
How or what is like a really cool project that's happening out of your local right now, like construction wise or maintenance wise, or what's going on right now that's really cool?
We are changing some of our coal-fired power plants over to liquefied natural gas plants.
Oh.
So that's really
Is that all
cool.
part of the LNG expansion or?
I'm not too familiar about that, so I don't
Okay.
really want to talk on that because I don't want to give you any BS.
Yeah.
Honestly, hopefully new construction can pick up. Obviously, we dealt with a bit of a recession back in 2014, so we're going to see how that goes for the next couple of years.
Mhm.
But every single time we go on the job, there's always a new cool project.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pinpoint it just to one thing because another company will be upset because they're all
I thought we were the coolest job right
exactly,
now.
Exactly.
And coming out of this conference, how do you feel? Was the win for you this week? Aside from just there's a little bit of network, a little bit of talking. You had your talk. I assume it was well received. Yeah.
I am very excited to see what's going to happen in the months to come, because the conversation that I had today was to inform other individuals if they're interested to sponsor events similar to a weld rodeo or even to start and their own welding event similar to what we're doing in Calgary, but in their own personal communities. how can we in Calgary assist you with some of that networking and or provide them with that roadmap?
You have the experience, right?
Yeah. So I really look forward to seeing more events like this blossom across Canada because it's various.
Well, and I hope to see the Boilermakers coming out more to events. You know, we had the talk last night. There was the ironworker table. There was like 6 ironworker locals represented at one, and I was like, "That's fantastic!" I'm like, I want to see the pipe. I want to see the Boilermakers. I want to see the millwrights represent like that because I feel like the Boilermakers haven't been coming out to a lot of these events in the past, and I would love to see them more. And I know my dad, he's always asking, like, well, how many Boilermakers are around? I'm like, oh, you know, they're kind of reclusive, those Boilermakers.
We're always busy.
Yeah.
We're always on the job.
Go sit somewhere or make money. I find that one of the things the Boilermakers have done very well compared to all steel industries right now is that they have elevated, or just, no, I shouldn't say they, like, it wasn't like the Boilermakers did it, but it was like, the space has been created for women to become in positions of power, right? You see the Jamie Bevins, you see yourself, you see the women in the Boilermakers that are climbing to the top of the food chain. I feel, and I've said this for years, that is the key to diversity. It's not just about getting women, people of color, LGBTQ. It's not about just getting them in the door. That's like 1/100th of the battle. The next is to watch them grow. You need people that are diverse to become positions of power, to move up, for women to be business owners of a weld shop.
To be represented.
That's right. And to be the hirers and the decision makers, because then that's proper representation. It's not like a company saying, oh, we got 50% women, but all the bosses are men and all the bottom is women. Well, that's not fair representation, right? It's got to be the climb. And there's a very hard attrition in the industry for people of color and other diverse groups, right?
But that's also why we started a women's committee. We have a women's committee with Local Lodge 146 in Alberta. We also have another women's committee here in Ontario, and that's just growing and expanding. And with our 2 committees, we've been working together in order to outreach to more women who are Boilermakers across Canada, right? So what do you need from us, right? And that's the question, because you need to hear it from the boots on the ground before we can make any changes.
Yeah. Okay. Last couple questions before we wrap up the interview. Let's see. I always make these up on the spot. So let's see. Second last question I'll ask about, your skill set. You started off in fashion, switched over to welding, welding to boiler making, now to instructing. This is a pretty, broad spectrum of jobs that you've had. What skills have served you well in this journey from front to back?
Honestly, the skills that have served me well was being an active listener, not being afraid to do something that I'm intimidated with and that I've never done before. So sometimes you just have to jump head first into that cold pool of water and go with the flow. But if you do not get out of your comfort zone, you won't grow. So that's something that's been really helpful to me. Skill sets, if someone's handing you an opportunity, you take that opportunity and you try and grow that opportunity, such as with the UTIP program, right? You have an opportunity to get your pressure ticket, get
Get on it,
now, what else can you do? Because I love welding so much, metallurgy really attracted me. So I started going down that road, and I ended up getting my welding examination just because that's something I absolutely love.
I'm a metallurgy nerd.
But I'm going to be a student of CWB shortly. I'm going to be taking my level 1.
Good.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's actually level 1. I think should be mandatory for any instructor in Canada. You learn a lot of good metallurgy in there, a lot of really good stuff to know. It's a good course. Level 2, I mean, that's option if you decide to go down that inspection route, sure.
Yeah.
But even just as an informative point, I find that the level 1 courses should just be standard issue. Like, I mean, it's 2 weeks. It's not a big deal, So, and last question for you is, and this can be your pitch time. All right. What would you say to someone that's interested in joining the Boilermakers anywhere in Canada at any age of any group? What's the best way to do it? How do they do it? And what advice would you give them coming in blind into this trade to prepare them?
So if you're interested to join the Boilermakers and you are brand new to the industry, I would say go to the hall, speak with the representatives there, ask as many questions as you can. If you're not sure what questions to ask, do a little bit of research on who the Boilermakers are and the kind of work that we do. If the Boilermakers in your community offer a pre-apprenticeship program, take that as soon as possible and have confidence with yourself and your capabilities, because it's not about perfection, it's about progression. And we understand that, especially as journeymen. We are expecting our apprentices to ask 1,000,001 questions. We're expecting our apprentices to make a mistake here or there, because if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn how to fix them. So don't be intimidated and take that first step. I also strongly recommend that if you're afraid of doing it, that's just more incentive to get it done.
If you're not scared, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But in order to be successful in this industry, you have to be reliable. You have to have the initiative to move forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Any shout outs for anybody out there?
I wasn't prepared for that question.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of many different people now. I just want to say thank you very much for all of my mentors that helped me to where I'm currently at. I would like to say thank you very much for CWB for inviting me here for this conference. I've had an awesome time meeting yourself and so many other wonderful people. And I just want to shout out to all the Boilermakers across North America.
All right.
You guys are doing awesome.
That'll make my dad happy. He's older. He still pulls out his pressure tickets. I was the first one in Saskatchewan to have Inconel 6-inch or blah, blah.
And it's handwritten
too.
It
was handwritten. Yeah. He's got a book full of old handwritten tickets. I'm like, all right, Dad, you'll fart. Yeah. Now he's got a pacemaker and he can't weld anymore.
No.
And it crushed him. Poor guy, because now he can't even come into my garage and play with my weld machines because he's like, oh, my pacemaker. And I was like, whatever. You had a long life. Might as well go out welding.
Virtual reality welding.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today, Kayla.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. For all the people that have been following along here at EdCon, if you have never been to an EdCon, make sure you go next year for the CWB. Our two main conferences every year, EdCon and CanWeld. CanWeld's coming up in Moncton, New Brunswick, October 18th and 19th. Registration will be coming out sometime at the end of June 2023. So please make sure you check online and get registered. It will be a limited access event. There's not endless numbers available. So make sure that you get registered and all your friends and all your people early so that you get the hotels, because we're in a smaller location. Moncton's not huge, but we're going to have so many wild events going on there. It's going to be rad. So sign up for that. Podcast, keep watching them, listening them, downloading them, commenting on them, comment on YouTube, comment on whatever streaming service you're listening to, and make sure you get us any feedback or suggestions that you want on the podcast. We really appreciate it. But aside from that, wait for the next episode and stay tuned.
We hope you enjoyed the show.